Hey Artnerds, another watercolor illustration, another watercolor chat. So this one is inspired by apple cider. I know, not a tea, but there are a lot of apple ciders that you can brew from tea bags. My favorite is actually Trader Joe's apple cider. It's pretty dang good. Trader Joe's here in Louisiana is like some sort of mythical beast with a line wrapped all the way twice. So I've been trying other tea bag apple ciders, which are not quite as good. But someday I'll find another great tea bag apple cider and I'll be able to lazily enjoy my apple cider at home. So we're on our sixth tea watercolor illustration. And I say tea in heavy air quotes. Most of these were not actually true teas, but rather herbal infusions or tisanes. I can't really drink a lot of like black tea or green tea because for some reason they just really ramp my anxiety up to 11, but I do really enjoy like tea lattes, my favorite being like ginger tea latte. Those are delicious. They're so warming when it's super duper cold outside and you need something that is not only warming but also going to help you feel better, and that ginger really does the trick. But we're not talking about ginger today. We're talking about apple cider. So the cup Kara is holding is a glass punch bowl cup. I've started collecting those in addition to the Demitasse cups that I've been collecting, and actually worked heavily from reference for this one. So knowing that painting transparent reflective cut glass with a liquid inside would be challenging for me, when I first had the concept for this, I took a bunch of photos of Tivana apple cider in one of my punch bowl cups and used that as reference for this illustration. And that's something I often do, and I don't really make a big deal about it because for me, working from reference is such an important part of my process. I don't really think to mention it because I feel every artist should be working from reference, whether you're creating your own reference like I did here with the cider in a teacup or a punch cup, to Googling things and working from several different references. Working from reference can really help make your art stronger because you're not just working from imagination and memory, you're working from what you actually see. And I've said this in a bunch of different videos here on the channel, but for me, a lot of illustration is just taking things that really exist and making them seem more. So like in terms of like expressions, because it comes up a lot when I'm drawing emotions, I'm taking a real emotion and amping it up just a little bit. It's kind of like with food, you know, food has a natural flavor, a little bit of salt amps that flavor up and makes it so much more tasty. So in this illustration, I used a little bit of masking fluid. I've actually gotten some questions about how to use masking fluid, and while I don't use it too frequently, I'm not a huge fan of it. I like what it can do, but I don't like all the fuss, and I don't like when it goes wrong, and I've had it go wrong so many times. But I do have a couple of videos here on the channel kind of talking about masking fluid, but what I've been doing is I've been putting it in a little dinky dip and just working from that dinky dip cup, and that way the whole bottle doesn't spoil from opening, closing, just that little dinky dip does. So I could toss that in the trash if I needed to. And then I use a synthetic brush and I soap it up with brush soap. You could also use baby shampoo. This prevents the latex from saturating the bristles and ruining your brush. And then once I'm finished with my masking fluid, I immediately clean the brush in clean water and brush soap, and I make sure to pull that latex out of the brush when I'm done. So in most of these watercolor chat videos, we have a couple of hero colors that are worth talking about. And I feel like today's hero colors are probably going to end up being the same hero colors I've mentioned at some other point in the past, but they're so prevalent in this illustration that it's worth mentioning. So for the gold bells and the gold balls, I'm really relying heavily on Daniel Smith's old Quin gold. It's this really rich gold color. I think of it as Toyota gold because when Joseph and I went to a Daniel Smith talk held by the current president during Hands-On Creativity at Plaza in Nashville, he mentioned that Toyota was the company that owned the rights to this pigment, the mining rights to this pigment, and the distribution, and that they had decided they no longer needed to mine this color. It was no longer popular, and that's why Daniel Smith switched to a new formulation. So I think of it as Toyota gold. I had a family member, I think it was an uncle, had a car this color, and gosh, this color is ugly on cars. But it's beautiful in watercolor, and it's kind of a shame that we're going to lose this color. But I haven't had a chance to try their new Quin gold. And there's a lot of companies that make good Quin golds, like Core's Quin gold is also very nice. So one of my other hero colors for today is Holbein's Imaldazorone brown. It was a hero color previously in one of the, in fact, possibly in the other winter inspired video. And it's this warm, rich, reddish brown that works great for, in this instance, mixing with Quin gold to make a cidery color. But it also works well for like brickwork. Another color that really deserves mention is Daniel Smith's Apatite green. In fact, I'm using mostly Daniel Smith greens for the fur greenery around carrot. Now, I started with a base of Winsor and Newton green gold, and in some instances I dabbed in some Undersea green, or I dabbed in some Apatite green wet into wet. But once it had a chance to dry, that's when I really start going in and adding in these really small fir leaf shaped strokes. Painting fir branches is super easy because once you kind of figure out the basic shapes, if you ever study fir from real life, you'll see that you have a branch or a stick, and then all of the little leaves branch off from that almost in a fir-like pattern. So if you keep it simple, you can be really successful in painting holiday greenery like this. And it's something that when I do Christmas cards, I end up painting a lot of it because it's something I paint fairly well, and it is so wintry, it's so holiday, it's so Christmassy even, that it's a good shorthand for like, this is a Christmas card. So on Kara's dress, I wanted it to look like a holiday party kind of image. So that's why she's holding the big glass punch bowl cup as compared to like the fluted glass cinnamon teacup that she had in the other wintry video. And so her dress is kind of an overlay of translucent fabric, and I achieved that by painting a little bit of her skin underneath and also keeping the colors really light. And later on you'll see that I paint an underskirt. I decided to go in and add in the underskirt as well. And I also shaded this with ultramarine deeps, an LEA ultramarine deep, and then on top of it I painted an overlay of embroidered gold stars, just to kind of make it feel more festive and more special. Once I finished painting the teacup and that area of the paper had had a chance to dry fully, I used a masking fluid pickup, like a masking fluid eraser, to pick up my masking frisket, my masking fluid. Some people use their fingers. I've tried that. I have way more success with the masking fluid pickup. They last a really long time and they're very cheap. So if you also struggle with masking fluid like I do, that might be worth investigating. So while I was working on this piece, I was in kind of the back half of Lilliputian Living. And Lilliputian Living is my October inking zine. This is my 4th year in a row. It kind of evolved from what used to be Inktober, but since so many artists have decided that Inktober terminology is no longer useful for them, or it's too confining for them, or they don't like Parker's terms of service, or they find them nebulous and changing at best, many people still enjoy doing art challenges in October, using October as a chance to develop either ideas or themselves or their skills. And I still wanted to continue to work on Lilliputian Living. So I decided to continue it even without utilizing the Inktober branding and the hashtag and the community that used to be around it. And so I'm in the 4th year now, and this year it's Lilliputians repurposing human objects. And you know, I always enjoy working on Lilliputian living. I always enjoy spending that time world building and coming up with creative solutions and coming up with creative prompts. And in general, it really scratches the writing side of my brain, because I started out as a writer and then I became a comic artist because I wanted to be able to handle all of it. You know, you have one flaky artist, and I'm not saying artists are flaky, obviously, but you deal with one flaky artist and you decide you don't want someone else to have that power over you. So then you start picking up the skills, which is one of the reasons I firmly believe anybody who has the time to invest and access to resources, which I try to make as free and as accessible as possible, can learn how to draw, can get the basic skills. So I don't always have a lot of patience for writers who complain about that, because it's like, well, I was a writer and I learned how to draw. You can probably at least learn how to do stick figures. But anyway, this Lilliputian living has not been as fun for me as some of the ones in the past. And a lot of it is that loss of community. It's that loss of people engaging with those illustrations. And a few people have been kind enough to reach out to me and tell me that they've enjoyed Lilliputian living this year, which I really do appreciate, because when I make art to communicate. I make art to make other people feel things or to get a reaction out of other people. And I generally try not to be reactionary. I generally try to inspire positive feelings like comfort and kindness and warmth with my art. But people generally don't reach out to me all that much. So I really do appreciate it when they do, especially with a project like Lilliputian Living, where it is very time consuming, frankly, and it's something that I work on every day. There's a new update every day. I post it on Instagram, I post it on Twitter, and I post it here on YouTube. And it just doesn't get the response this year that it's gotten in years past. So it does feel a little bit lonely. And it's not quite as showy as some other people's October art challenges, which is fine. It is what it is by design. I am working on other projects, as you can see from here, but sometimes it can be difficult not to compare myself with them. I often feel, and some of you guys might be surprised to hear this, but I feel like I work very slow compared to other artists. And yet on the same token, I also sometimes feel like I just don't have the attention span to put in the detail or to put in the refinement that my work might really need. As an artist with ADHD, there are many days where I am white-knuckling my chair to keep myself making art, to keep myself creating things, because my attention span is just elsewhere that day, or I just lack the focus. And I've talked about that a lot in the My Life with ADHD series, and it's probably something I should revisit and talk about more, because for me, that is my biggest ADHD struggle, is that focus. And it's not that I'm not able to force myself to do it. I have a lot of willpower, but it's also very exhausting, and I'm constantly struggling with burnout and depression. So, you know, just because you can force yourself to do something doesn't make it the right thing. So this Lilliputian living has definitely been more challenging for me. But on the bright side, we're compiling volumes 1 through 4. So that's like over 120 illustrations, about 240, 250 pages. We're compiling all 4 volumes into a single little perfect bound edition. And that's my carrot. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to tying these 4 volumes together, having them presented in one piece, and hopefully more people will pick it up and try it, enjoy reading it. I've definitely enjoyed building and developing this world. Years ago, someone in a Discord server I was a co-creator of told me I didn't do enough world building. Now, this is somebody who spent all his time world building and none of his time actually writing, so I thought it was really funny. But see, it's not true. I feel like I always do concept and development before I start my project, and I continue to do world building and development throughout the project, particularly as I need to solve problems. I find that so many people who want to make these big, well-developed worlds spend all their time developing the world, developing the rules, developing the magic systems, and none of the time actually creating that world. Whereas I feel like I take more of the Terry Pratchett approach, where when a problem comes up, we'll figure it out in footnotes, which is what Lilliputian living is for me. It's kind of the footnotes of 7-inch Kara. It's often, unfortunately, a darker side of what life is like at 7 inches tall. There's a high infant mortality rate. There's a high childbirth mortality rate. There's a lot of sickness. There's a lot of getting eaten by animals. There's often starvation and freezing to death. But there's also a lot of ingenuity and recycling and repurposing things. There's a lot of community and coming together to solve problems. Their values are a bit different from ours as humans, since hospitality, treating those who come into your home with the utmost respect, is very important to Lilliputians, since traveling is so dangerous for them. And messengers and merchants are highly esteemed for what they can bring into your life. Whereas here we just have different values as humans. And so that was Lilliputian living, is kind of my chance to explore that, since Kara and her family live very divorced, very remote from other Lilliputians. They're very detached from Lilliputian society and from human society. They are not really a good or accurate representation of what life is like as a Lilliputian. So Lilliputian living gives me the opportunity to show different pets, and to show how different seasons are handled, and to show different professions, and to show different family structures, all sorts of things that I'm not really able to do in 7-inch Kara, because it really just focuses on one Lilliputian family. But for me, it's a little bit like playing in my sandbox or playing with dolls. You know, you're creating a world and you're playing around with the ideas, and you're trying to mash 2 bits of fabric together, or 2 bits of paper together, or you're trying to wrap paper clips around something. You know, you're trying to take all these disparate pieces and find a way to make them work as a coherent whole. And to me, as a creator, that works best when the thing is in motion. It's like tuning a car. You know, you're going to try to start the car to see certain reactions, to see if certain things even turn on, if they even mesh together. Whereas if you're always building something static and you never turn it on to test it, you have no idea if it works. It might just be a bunch of pretty jangly pieces that fall apart when you try to turn it on. Now, that's just my world building philosophy. I don't expect other creators to necessarily take that stance. I just think it's important as creators that we respect the working methods of other creators, particularly other creators who are actually making the things they're talking about making. Because it's very easy to sit back and talk forever about doing something and never actually do it. And then we don't have any skin in the game. Our feelings are never going to get hurt. I say that, but you can get hurt over someone saying, hey, you never started your project. But you're so much more likely to get hurt if you're making something and it's out there for people to consume, and they like it or they don't like it, or they say nothing. So that was my watercolor chat for today. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and painting this with me. If you're looking for a more straightforward watercolor tutorial, I've got loads of them here on this channel that I hope you guys will check out. I have some wonderful playlists and videos linked down in the description below. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye, guys.